Craig Thomson. Thanks for joining us on Combat TV. First of all, over the last few years, you've been the most prolific boxing promoter, still while fighting yourself. It's a pretty big task. Can you go back to 2018 and tell us just a few of the highlights for yourself personally?
Yeah, I guess the biggest one would be finally sort of getting on US soil and having my first fight over there, which was a massive experience, and not just the fighting side of it itself, but the whole process, you know, like it's just different, and the guys that have done it will understand, but when you go and fight internationally, but especially in America, it's always sort of been seen as one of the home of fight sport. So just to be able to get there and be immersed in that kind of energy and that culture, and I was sort of helping out a little bit with the way things were being run over there at the casino, so that was kind of nice to be able to get a bit of an inside look at what goes on behind the scenes there too. So the whole thing was great. I think that was definitely the first fight there, and against Dennis Hallman, who was a bit of a UFC legend, and I'll admit he'd probably admit himself, he's a nice bloke, that he's probably past his peak of his powers, so to speak, Tony. But to get someone like that as well, which is an extra sort of, I guess, puts the cream on top, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, and your record, 11-0, and you've finished the last 6 early, so things are looking up good. You're going to continue fighting this year? Yeah,
I want to give, I'd say it's probably my last year, I'd say I want to try and make it a good one. With regards to my fights, like trying to promote, I've got a young family now as well, run a business and those sorts of things, so I just try to fit in my training when I can, and been fighting at a level where I'm comfortable that I can, with the training that I'm putting in, that I can put myself in a position to win without stretching myself too far. I'm just being blatantly honest. But I want to lift it up now for the sort of final fling, I suppose. 35 years of age, like I said, young family and other things that are starting to take over. So yeah, I've got some good little plans in place for this year and sort of go out with a bang, I hope.
And on the promotional side, you've got a show coming up shortly, we'll talk about a bit later, but is that going to be an ongoing thing, because you have been very busy and you've given a lot of fighters chances over the last few years. How long have you been training, promoting?
Promoting now would have to be 15, coming up 16 years. So I'm 35, like I said, so yeah, started just as I turned 20. And it was always about giving, like you said, Tony, fighters a chance, and I'm such a passionate fight sport person, and I like getting in behind guys and seeing how far they can take their own sport, in this case boxing. So I want to keep doing it, and I've got some plans for shows this year. We're going to do 2 biggish ones, or you know, the sort of Alizé event centre type events, and then a couple of smaller ones around it, which I call my sort of grassroots shows that sort of feed into the Alizé show. So it just keeps things ticking over. So we're looking at 4 events this year, and then once I can finally hang my gloves up and move that side of my life away, then I can probably concentrate more on the promotional side of things, and I'm looking to do some big things for 2020, but we're in 2019 now, so get that out of the way first.
Yeah. Some of the fighters that you have helped along the way, I know you've had insights into fighters that you haven't trained personally, but like Panavu Halu and fighters like that, you get a big thrill out of seeing those guys go on.
Yeah, 100%. Tony, like Panuvi's definitely a young guy and more recent fighter we've been looking after, and the world's his oyster really. So he's now with CKB and Doug Viney and the change was necessary for Panuvi, and his uncle, who was training with that Pridelands, gave Panuvi his blessing and actually encouraged it. So I think that was really awesome to see. You know, sometimes guys get a little bit personal, or things can get in the way of, but he was very encouraging of Panuvi and Doug and those guys taking over, knowing that was a great place for him to be. So yeah, definitely Panuvi's one of the guys at the moment. If go back, you know, Gunnar Jackson's been going around for a while now. I'm sorry, Gunnar, it's been a while, but so he's been one of our long-standing guys we've been promoting, right back to some of the American guys we brought in early days, obviously Chauncey Welliver and Jameson Bostick, a number of other guys as well. So just try and name them all, I'd scratch my head, but there's been a few.
Yeah, and this year, or last year I should say now, you brought over Bernie Hopalian, and he brought a couple of exciting fighters. Are they going to come back this year?
They're going to come back, yeah. We struck a good friendship up with Bernie and spent some time with him in America when I was up there. Bernie's a great guy, and he's got some good contacts in the US. Obviously, we brought down the beast, James Wilson, first part of 2018. He's now signed with Golden Boy, so it's kind of great to see the progression, you know, and he's got himself established here in New Zealand, and they saw him and they picked him up, so that's awesome for James. He brought down Dave Roberts, another young guy, Darian Chapman. Both those guys hopefully be back this year as well, doing their thing too, Tony. So yeah, looking forward to that.
They didn't get out of step last year. They were really good.
David was his first time boxing, so you know you want to do right by the fighter. He brought himself out here, so you want to sort of try and gauge where they're at. So I think, and he's keen. He wants to step it up next time as well in terms of opposition and have a crack at some of our better cruiserweights. So I'm looking forward to that as well, because it sort of opens up and the market, I suppose, and sort of when it comes to matching. And David wants to, and same with Darian, he's the same, you know, and had a real tough fight on our show against Shiva. I think it was the fight of the night. You might agree, but he's keen to rematch Shiva again. I would be keen to do that too, because that was a cracking fight. So
it was a real good one. And will they be sticking to boxing this time, because they mixed it up with MMA last trip?
Yeah, they did. They had an MMA fight to finish. They wanted just to box, but they can do both. So if we have to, they'll probably do it again. But I think they'd like to predominantly box if they can. But hey, they're such awesome guys. If something comes up, they'll probably jump at it. So you never know, they might be in the MMA octagon again.
Yeah, well, you mentioned like Jefferson Bostick. That was a few years ago, and Chauncey coming over. That's been something that's I think is really beneficial, because in the old days when kickboxing started and the Thais were coming over, it's a little bit the same sort of thing, isn't it? You know, you bring in new blood with a lot of experience from outside. It's got to benefit our fighters.
And that was the sole purpose of it, right back when we first brought Chauncey down. You know, he's just a fountain of knowledge. The amount of world-class sparring camps he's been involved in, and the amount of shoulders he's been able to rub over the years, and to bring that into not just into the ring to fight for people to see it, but into the gyms when he's in there talking to young guys. Same with Jameson when he came down, same with James Beast Wilson, and same with all the other guys we've brought through from the States as well. So I like to think that, and they have, and they've done a great job of doing it, is that they pass on their knowledge to the younger generation here in New Zealand, and even some of the older guys here that haven't been exposed perhaps to that level. And I think that if they can rub shoulders with those guys and get some knowledge passed on, that's awesome, you know.
Well, it looks like that part of the game has been catered for in 2019. One thing I've got to ask you, that we had a fair bit of controversy about the corporate boxing. Can I get your ideas on corporate boxing? Is it a knee-jerk reaction that we're going to, or is things, how do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I try and keep it as quick as I can, but I came up through corporate boxing. You probably remember years ago when I first stepped into, had my first few fights, it was through corporate boxing. So I think there's definitely a place for it, for guys and females, of course, that just want to do the bucket list, have a fight, go through the experience, and then they're done. That's awesome. But it's also, I think, it's an avenue for males and females that want to get their toes wet into boxing, and then they decide they actually really enjoy it, have a few more corporate fights, and think, okay, I want to go and become an amateur, or I want to go try the pro ranks. So I didn't even get into amateur boxing. I just went straight from the corporates into professional, simply because you know, from the amateur side of things, professional boxing has always been my passion. So I thought if I can get a little bit of experience as a corporate and give the pro ranks a crack, then that's great too. And having said that, I do love the amateur boxing as well. So with regards to what you mentioned with knee-jerk reaction, I think it is a little bit. In an ideal world, there'd be no injuries, there'd be no fatalities, and obviously it's a tragic thing. I think we need to educate the public better. I think we need to let them know more about around the safety side of things. And you know, there's a ringside doctor, there's medical checks, all these things that we do. Can it be done better? Probably. There's always things you can always improve. I don't think there's everything that you say, right, that's as best we can do it, just leave it alone now. So I think we should be evolving and trying to improve things, but certainly I think perhaps a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, and I think everyone just has to remember that in the great scheme of things, I think there were more tragic events or deaths and injuries in recreational fishing last year from some records I pulled up than there was in boxing. So you know, you always got to sort of take it with a grain of salt.
I can remember, and you'll remember it too, Craig, when corporate boxing started. Boxing was in a fairly dire straits over here, and I don't think it would have survived without.
Oh, the corporate boxing definitely gave it a big boost and breathed some life back into the sport. 100%, I have to agree with that. I think it can also reach a stage where, with professional boxing we are in New Zealand at the moment, there's some great things happening. Joseph Parker is obviously leading the way there, some guys following him, and Junior Farr and the Hemi Ahios, plus some guys in the lighter weights as well doing some great things, your Bon Morgans and bits and pieces. So I think we've got some really good things happening in professional boxing. I think there can be a lot more things done to make it better as well. I think the corporate boxing, I'd like to see a cap on how many fights you can have. Maybe it's 5. I don't know the magic number, but then those guys then can move into either a semi-pro or professional boxing or into amateur boxing and push those people into those sports to help grow that side of things. Because I think we're lacking a real sort of mid-level in pro boxing in New Zealand. It's the guys, some of who I've just mentioned, at the very top. Bit of a gap to the guys that are sort of just starting out, and it's really hard to fill that gap. You can't have a pro debut guy fighting a Junior Farr, for example. It's just the poor bugger. So we've got to find that happy medium. We're putting some of the guys in corporate boxing into the pro boxing or even amateur boxing and trying to fill a bit of a void. I think that's what we're really lacking here at the moment.
You've got a show in about 3 weeks' time. Can you tell us a little bit about that, because there's a couple of interesting names on there?
Yeah, so we've got a February 23rd show at the Sports Cave in Stanmore Bay. It's a new indoor facility. Really excited about using it for the first time and seeing how things work there, because we want to sort of push along and get some more events up in the Hibiscus Coast region. I live up there myself, so it's also nice to be able to promote in your local area. We have a main event which features Marcus Hayward, who's a young but experienced kickboxer. He's kind of looking at it from the Conor McGregor angle, I think, which is going to jump in straight against one of the top dogs in Gunnar Jackson and test himself out over 5 3-minute rounds as a middleweight. So I take my hat off to Marcus. He wanted to be tested, and he really wanted to go in against one of the best. He said, "Give me the best guy you can find in New Zealand at middleweight." And I said, "Well, I know a pretty handy guy in Gunnar Jackson." And he said, "I'll take it." And Gunnar being Gunnar, he's never said no to a fight ever. So I knew straight away it was going to be the easiest match to make. So looking forward to that. I think Marcus is definitely the underdog, but he brings obviously some youth and confidence that youth brings. Great, he's very fit. You would have seen him kickboxing. He's very tough and he's got a lot of heart. So I think and Gunnar, I don't want to call him old twice in one interview, but the old dog's going to come and show the tricks he's still got up his sleeve. So I think that's going to be a great main event. We've got some corporate boxing bouts as well to kick the night off with, and also some indoor sport going on too, some indoor cricket and indoor touch. And we've been played just as well, sort of the whole night of sport, which is really cool.
So something innovative.
Exactly, something for everyone basically, yeah.
Hey, thanks for your talk.
All right, thanks
mate.
very much, Tony.
Yeah,
Always.
cheers.
Good man.